will they meet the future needs based on what we intend to do with building renovation?
They are based on current prediction of how many students will be in there when the buildings are done. So Steele and King isn't on there right now. We're hoping to get to that one next. And I am embarrassed to admit, I don't remember. We tried for King and it didn't work for some reason. And Lombard is based on what the assumed population of Lombard would be. Steele is based on the assumed population of that. GHS is based on the assumed population of that in the future, although, no, that was based on the 712 numbers, yeah, that's right.
Will some of our electrical needs be changing as we add air conditioning to?
Absolutely, they will be, but you can't do it based on that because they only know a population. The other thing that we're also looking at doing though is retrofitting a lot of the light fixtures in there with LEDs. We already have a lot of air conditioning units at the high school. I mean, I don't know, at this moment, I couldn't tell you what the load difference is going to be, but we're already using a whole bunch of inefficient room ones there. So it's not the huge sea change that you would think. It's more, but not like from off to on.
So we'll hear more about this in the next 2 weeks.
Yes, once we get the agreements lined out, and Luke has been great, got us all the stuff as fast as we can get it. You know, obviously, if we don't have things worked out by then, we'll say no. I mean, we can't make an agreement on presumed changes. We have to already be known and locked in. So we will keep you updated as the negotiation goes on.
And this is something that's being offered now, and there could be another lottery.
Yeah, there could be. There
well,
could be.
because-
There could be. There's also, you know, there are other, I can tell you this from my prior experience, there are other grants that open up to us by having solar already that were not available to us now if we don't have any. The grant that we used to get the Farmington one is no longer an option. They're not operating. So that would have been nice.
Questions, please direct them to Dr. Asplund so that when we are called back to possibly make a vote on this, you feel you are informed enough to do so. It just, that you all just witnessed that. I get a lot of flack up here because my meetings take so long. But if I were not to allow them to ask the questions, they would not be able to vote, correct? Correct?
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to the gallery.
Just talking to Rod.
Okay.
Which one?
His
So-
history.
That's Ross.
Do we need a motion and a second to table?
But it's just taken.
No, it's just
You don't need to.
Thank you. So moving on, focus area 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. First, under this item, consider approval of the 2019-2020 board meeting dates. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I think I heard me first. Okay, Dr. Esplin.
Thank you. So there's not a big departure from last year. The only difference I can see at all is because we have school on Columbus Day next year. We to have no for it. Yeah. And then Veterans Day is on a Monday. So instead of Tuesday in October, we have Tuesday in November. And as usual, we have the third Wednesday or third Monday in September, correct? Yeah. Because of having to have the 30 days between the proposed budget and the actual budget. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So that's what we've recommended. Oh, I see April 14th as well, the Tuesday. But it's very similar to what you experience most years.
Any questions?
No, but I want to throw something out there.
Yes.
Not that I'm necessarily advocating for this, but it came up at a meeting I was at earlier today, wondering if it would be possible to change the day of the week of the board meetings. I don't hope these walls don't fall down at even that suggestion, but in that it's not the ideal having a Monday work day, be 12, 15 hours long. Maybe easing into it or having it on Tuesday or Thursday would be better. My thought was, in fact, it came up today, was when we get the agenda on Friday, which I would still want the agenda on Friday, but it doesn't give us much time so far as work days are concerned. If we have questions, if we want to call Dr. Asplund about something that's on the agenda, It's a little difficult to get that information on Monday. If we had the meetings on Tuesday, it would give us an extra day for that. I don't know if there's any interest in that, but I thought I would just throw it out to see what everybody thought.
I thought so you can watch the football games.
Not me.
I thought that, so in regards to lead time between agenda and meeting, we can just ask Dr. Esplin to get the agenda items to us earlier if we want them. It's a crimp on the administrators,
Yeah, I guess we could do that.
but to say we'd like the materials Thursday, we can do that. Correct me if I'm
We
wrong.
try and
know.
get it
I
on
don't know.
Thursday, some months we don't get there because there's so.
And I don't know if it would have an effect on the attendance at these meetings. I don't know, because
I think what we're gonna
we've
run
always done
into
on Mondays,
is there are a lot of activities that happen in schools on Tuesdays. Correct me if I'm
but
wrong.
I'm missing one tonight just too. So, I mean, they have them on Mondays too. I missed them.
Right, but I think,
Well, starting next year with Big Six adding 2 schools, we're gonna be playing a lot of Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So athletically, I'm just.
Okay, but like I said, I'm not, sitting here, just chomping at the bit to do this, but it was brought up and I thought I would bring it up just to see if there was any interest or not.
I wouldn't opposed, but I don't really care if it's a Monday or a Tuesday. I'll be here.
Mondays are good for me.
Mondays are good.
Okay. Thank you, Member Banks. Always good to bring up new ideas. Any other questions? I'm just looking at the dates and my calendar is wonky. Okay. Allison?
Cervantes.
Aye.
Lyon. Phelps.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Sharpie.
Yes,
Walters.
Aye.
Thanks.
Next, consider approval of the amended 2018-2019 budget. Do I have a motion?
so moved. Second.
Mrs. Ham?
Okay, before the board votes on the amended budget, one of the questions that was asked last month was, how does the change in the budget affect our board policy 4:10 in terms of meeting our fiscal goals in terms of fund balances? So if Allison, you could turn to the next slide. For our new board members, I've just included our board policy, and really the two that we're gonna be focused on tonight is number 6 and number 7 on board policy 4:10, which the first goal is that we have a goal in all of our operating funds to have 180 days of cash on hand. And then our second goal is to have a 2-to-1 fund balance ratio between revenue and our fund balance. So in the fall, when we originally passed this budget, we had projected that we would be, can you go to the next slide? Awesome, thank you. That in the education fund with our projected fund balances in the 180-day cash on hand goal, that we would be at 73% of our goal. In the ed fund, that we would have met operations and maintenance goal, and in transportation, we would have met that goal as well. With the adjustment in revenue, and as I said earlier during the budget hearing, we had some reallocations of Title I, Title II. We had some new RLIS, which is regional or rural low income schools grant, and some other additional revenue that we amended the budget. So we're looking at being at 89% of our goal of 180 days of cash on hand. And then once again, we've met in operations and maintenance and transportation. And then on the next slide.
Explain your note here that would increase by $500,000.
Yes, so I just wanted to point out that next year, because we had to adjust the tort levy to ensure that we kept the tax rate at around 44, 43, that we're going to have to transfer some of those expenditures out of tort for next year. So that we'll actually be looking at increases in our expenditures, decreases.
Increase in our expenditures in their operations and maintenance.
Correct. And
So-
also for the ed fund, because some of those
So
expenditures
hence-
are out of ed, some are out of O&M.
When, while it's met this year, it won't be met next year.
Potentially. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that when we see that, you know, how did we meet one year and we're pretty close at 89%,
It may
This
drop down
year,
to 72%.
that it may drop back down to around the 73% mark, which is where we were in the fall. So that may fluctuate. But we're definitely in a much better condition financially than we were to meet these goals a couple of years ago. And then the second goal is to operate with a revenue to fund balance ratio of 2-to-1. So you can see in the education fund, we're at 85% towards our goal on that. We've met in operations and maintenance, and we've also met in transportation. Now, I would just caution everyone, particularly in transportation, that 2 years ago, we transferred $1 million from working cash into transportation to make that solvent, because that was before the budget crisis was resolved in Springfield, and we were getting, before we were getting more timely payments. You know, at some point, if, you know, there are problems with payments from Springfield, you know, this cushion can go away very quickly. Plus, we're also looking at a, please help me here, Dr. Aspen, is it a 7% increase in our first student contract for this year?
7, yes, 7.
7% increase in our transportation costs. So, you know, although there is a nice cushion there, we just want to be very conscious that that can be depleted very, very quickly.
So is $1 million paid back in working cash?
It would not pay back.
So
So
we should be doing that.
we don't need to, it was a permanent transfer.
It wasn't
So-
long.
It was not a loan from working cash. So it was a permanent transfer. And of course, we have, at this point in time, unless the law changes, which there is some conversation about that, you can transfer monies from transportation, O&M, and education fund in between those. So,
Not true.
so we've made nice progress towards meeting those two board goals.
No, well, these are our internal goals. We set them internally. Is there not a recognition level that these goals meet as well? Where does that fall in?
So that is in our annual financial report, our AFR, that the auditor gives each year. And it's based on a variety of factors, cash on hand, you know, we were looking at a 4.0 out of 4 for cash on hand. And so we've already met that, but then there's other factors that go into that rating. So we met recognition this year,
Well, and if we take out more debt, that's going to lower our score.
correct?
It's fund balance to revenue ratio, days cash on hand, the amount of long-term debt you have, and the amount of short-term debt you have. And our long-term debt will drive our score down, although it's not weighted as much as fund balance to revenue ratio and days cash on hand.
So that's why we've, you know, actually our financial profile score has actually increased a little bit every year because we have been able to build up cash on hand in our reserves, so.
Any other questions? Can I just say that all of the tears and frustration that impacted my first year and a half as a look at gathering are worth it when I see numbers like that. We're no longer deficit spending. We're in a decent place. I don't have to worry about what the governor decides to do tomorrow.
It's a good place to be.
I think it's a good.
Yeah, it's
place.
called Illinois.
Listen, Maureen, can I have a moment, please? All right. Allison?
Lyon,
Oh, yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Sharpie,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
Banks.
Yes.
Cervantes.
Aye. Okay, the moment the new board members have been waiting for, appointment of their committees. Please, this will be in the minutes, but I also ask that board members take note of the committee that you're going to be assigned to, because I recall at one point this didn't happen and we had to go back and find the minutes because nobody kept track.
We'll put out a list.
Okay. Member Sherby, insurance and negotiations. Member Banks will retain her position with the Red Committee and will also be with Curriculum Committee. Member Lyon, you will be with Negotiations and Building and Grounds. Member Phelps, Budget and Policy. Member Rodriguez, Policy and Behavior Intervention. And Member Walters, Curriculum and Buildings and Grounds. That means that myself, I will be retaining my position with the Red Committee and the Budget Committee. Questions? You look puzzled.
Look ahead.
Okay. I believe I tried my best to have everybody. There are not two new board members
Other than
on
policy.
other, yeah,
That was on
policy.
purpose.
But that was done purpose because.
Thanks.
No, it's so that
It's a
you
good place to
learn.
learn.
It's a learning thing. But you'll have great guidance on that. So, all the rest of the committees, I will look to the, returning board members to, reach out and make sure that they're helping the newer board members understand and whoever calls the committee meetings, please. Okay? Questions? All right. Next up, consider approval of the trash bid. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Ham?
Okay, you have in front of you a recommendation for the trash bid for the next 3 years. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of options in our area, so we're recommending to grant the bid to Waste Management. We're looking at a 7.5% increase for 2019-20, 4% the following year, and 3.2% in the third year of the contract. We can opt to bid out after year one, but quite honestly, unless there is some sort of competitor that arises in the area, it would probably not result in savings. So
Now, where does the recycling fit? They pick up the bins. Is that a separate cost or?
that is part of it.
It doesn't list
Unfortunately,
it here anymore.
no, but unfortunately, there's some issues with recycling right now. So the recycling facilities aren't necessarily processing
Because they can't sell it.
because they can't sell it, and we don't have other countries that are purchasing our recycling products like they once were. So really our goal is going to be, and I'll be working with Mr. Davis on this, just to reduce our consumption overall, through paper products, through food waste, things of that nature. So unfortunately, recycling, as we would be commonly familiar with it, isn't as viable as it once was.
So are the schools not gonna have the bins any longer then?
We will still continue to have the bins, but some of the other products that we've made recycled in the past, we may be looking at other options. It's like aluminum, things of that nature.
It still has a domestic market though.
If you can find someone to take it, that's the problem. Scrap metal, that's what it's, scrap iron. But unfortunately, we don't recycle much of that.
Any other questions?
I have one question. I should have sent this to you. Why is Willard's amount of garbage twice in the other elementary schools? Is that a lot of money? But they have 8 cubic yards to pick up. The others are at 4.
I'm not sure. I can find out.
I meant to send that to you. I'm sorry.
Where are you seeing? Oh, right there. Good.
In the day when we had paper products in the kitchen, I could see that, but we're using non-paper in the kitchen now, right?
Mhm.
Or not plastic? We're using real trays.
Right, I'll find out why that is.
That's only-
Any other questions?
Yeah, I followed it, I don't know.
Thank you.
If no other questions, Allison?
Phelps,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Sharpie,
Yes.
Walters.
Aye.
Banks,
Aye.
Cervantes,
Aye.
Lyon.
No,
Your favorite trash just piling up everywhere.
in New York.
Yeah. Anarchy.
You never
I can't believe no one else did
that.
that.
Nobody else?
More will take it.
That's it.
No.
Next item, consider approval of press policies. This is the second reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Estes?
Thank you. So I sent you a list of them. All the policies there were almost entirely a list of legal updates. We have one new policy that we recommend to approve, and there's one policy that we recommend not to approve, and there's another, actually two. I'm not looking at the list off the top of my head. There's two. There's two. Yeah, the list that I sent out. One did not reflect, it's because of distance learning. One did not reflect our current practice. Well, actually, both of them didn't reflect our current practice. And the new one, we absolutely recommend to approve as written. And everything else is just footnotes. And that was based on the review we had last year. We decided not to put in those 5.330. It doesn't coincide with the CBA. And 6.185 doesn't coincide with how we award dual credit, distance learning credit. We've made a decision then not to approve.
Any questions? Allison?
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Sharpie.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Banks,
Aye.
Cervantes,
Aye.
Lyon,
Yes.
Phelps.
Next up, we have a discussion regarding breakfast in the classroom. Dr. Asplund?
Thank you. So we've asked Mr. Young now, and there we go. So there's Mr. Davis is coming up, Mrs. Graves, and they will be giving a presentation with some numbers. And in addition, I know Mr. Sharp said he'd be available to share concerns. So when we're done with the yays, Mr. Sharp can do the yeah buts. Is that fair? Okay.
All right, we'll just kind of look at when Jen approached us about doing breakfast in the classroom, there was a number of reasons why, and these are just some of the biggies. 48% of kids that get their free and reduced priced lunch are getting their breakfast. So about half the kids who qualify for free breakfast aren't getting it in Illinois. We rank 43rd in the nation among students who are actually getting their breakfast when they're entitled to it or when they qualify for it. And we have 16% of our children in Illinois who struggle with hunger. The research shows that when you have breakfast in the classroom or just breakfast in general, you have an increase in standardized test scores, concentration, comprehension, memory, participation, student nutrition, and a sense of community, especially with the breakfast in the classroom. They also note a decrease in tardiness, behavior issues, absenteeism, and the stigma that's associated with having breakfast in the cafeteria in the morning.
A little bit on nutritional requirements. Calorie requirements, daily average are 350, 500. I should probably introduce myself before I talk, shouldn't I? Because I'm the new guy. So Matt Davis, I'll be taking over for Pam Weber. She's retiring, so I'll be your food service director come June. To continue, so your fruit requirements are 5 cups a week, daily 1 cup. Whole grains, 7 ounces a week, daily 1 ounce. That's You know, some items we're serving have a 1.5 1.5 to 2 ounces, you know, per day. That's how you get that kind of built up. But everything's got to be whole grain now, so that's 51% whole grain. Milk, 5 cups, 1 cup daily. Saturated fat has to be less than 10% of your total calories, and your sodium is less than 430. The way the program works is we are required to provide 4 items, and then in order for the reimbursement to take place, the children need.
They can.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we have to provide for, they have to take
They have to take at
3.
least 3.
Yeah, sure. A little bit on numbers, and as we continue through the slides a little bit, there'll be some graphs, but just to kind of give you guys an idea, right now, let's see, Lombard started on the 4th of April. Steele started on the 22nd, correct? So far, Lombard since inception is doing 180 students a day. In January, they were doing 96, February 100, and March 97. Steele is doing 245 on average. In January, they were doing 153, February 145, and March 146. Our reimbursement rate is $2.14 per child. Now, the idea of this whole program is to make sure that our children are fed. So overall, children that are free and reduced, over half of them, when this program is provided to them, are responding to it. So we have seen an increase. You know, concentration levels and everything, they go up when your children are eating breakfast. And so hopefully that's going to also, we'll see test scores go up as well. It is a new program, and we'll come across some road bumps, and we'll talk about those, and we'll move forward. So if you guys want to talk about maybe specifics within each of your schools.
Absolutely.
So in my building, Lombard, typically the students enter the building every day at 7:40 a.m. That's when the doors open. That's when the bus doors open and let students off. At 7:50, we have a bell that rings to dismiss those students to the breakfast tables. There's a breakfast table at each grade level center within the building. So one at 6th grade, one at 7th grade, one at 8th grade. The students line up there, they grab the breakfast items like Mr. Davis explained, and then they go on into their advisory. At 8:05 is our tardy bell. That's when advisory is traditionally started. It's always started. You'll see some of the items that are served at Lombard that we've had there. The one thing you should notice here that was a change for us just to accommodate this program as we got it going was we shifted the 7:50 time. It was 7:55. So we took 5 minutes essentially away from the prep time the teachers had at the beginning of the day to allow the lines to get through. As we went forward, we've become so much more efficient. Probably at the beginning of next year, if we continue with this, we'll go back to our normal time. The kids are getting the hang of it. Staff's getting the hang of it. We're able to get in and out. So we want to try to restore that as much as we can. You'll see that this is more of if you're a visual learner. You can see the first big jump there is April 4th, and those are preceding days prior to that. And you can see how many students we've served throughout that time. There's a few asterisks next to some dates. Those are IAR testing days. We just put those on there just to denote that. But overall, students are eating more at Lombard since we've enacted this program. Some of the staff feedback that I've received from Lombard, this is not the entire list, but this is what I could do to kind of summarize everything into this presentation. There's no more time constraint with the new program that there was with the previous. So students, before I had to come in at 7:40. The breakfast door closed at 7:55. If you weren't in there, it was tough luck. Now, we obviously would never turn a kid away if he came because they're really hungry. We'd always try to find something for them. But That was kind of the old setup. It's more accessible due to the proximity of different grade levels, so everybody has access to it a lot easier. Obviously, more students are eating breakfast because of that, and the distribution has been really fast and smooth. Some of the cons that come across from the staff, you're not able to eat with your friends. You're stuck in your advisory or your first class. So you're stuck with those 15 to 18 kids every day. The cleanliness, both of like the hallways, the classrooms can be a concern at times. We call students down a lot at the end of that advisory period for different reasons. So you may be interrupting that breakfast time. So we have to be conscious of that. And then loss of activity time and SEL activities that they do in advisory, because that time's been scrunched. But we're hoping to kind of include some of this breakfast in those going forward. Student feedback, sorry?
Can you go back to, not to the slide, so you have tables full of bagged lunches, breakfast or something, they just walk by and pick one up, is that?
No, the cafeteria staff, as they're serving their styrofoam trays currently, and then the items that are served for that day are there. There's bag coolers of the milk at the end of the table, so they go through, let's say if they're getting a Go-Gurt, and what else is served there? An orange.
Okay.
They pick
So
it up.
it's by
It's like an
grade.
assembly line, yep, by grade. So 6th grade, you're at this table, you go through, 7th grade has one up in their hall, and 8th grade has one down in their hall.
And with the styrofoam tray, that's something we'll work on too. So, for example, like at Lombard, you have a styrofoam tray. Okay, so you have less mess on the table after the children eat. At Steele, I didn't believe you guys are using it, so you have a little bit more of a mess on the table. So
Our staff had an issue with the styrofoam, so we went to a paper boat, which is the lesser of the two evils, but they felt better about that.
Is there a reason why we're not using the lunchroom trays? Because we still have a dish machine there, don't we?
Well, that would be something to bring. I mean, as of right now, what's happening is they're able to throw their trash away, and a custodian or a student, however we proceed with it, is going to come by and pick that trash up and take that
It can
away.
be easily done in my building. Currently, with the way it works, they go to their Class E, they come out and dump it in a trash can, and the custodian hauls it off later. If we did the tray, it would just be simply dumping the tray and whatever they don't eat in the trash can, stack them up, and then the food service takes them back to the dishwasher.
If we just approve,
And that would
Right.
that
If
would
we're gonna look
eliminate
at trying to
waste.
be more renewable and things like that, we certainly should use some of those trays and the things that we have.
styrofoam's not a nice one.
No, it's not. Looking back to the presentation here, student feedback, had a couple students that gave me some feedback, basically talking about how efficient it was for them. They're able to eat. James R. he had 100 kids before, so he was really happy there. I'll turn it over to Mrs. White for this.
At Steele, our procedure looks a little bit different. At kindergarten, first, second, and third, all of the kids go out to morning recess upon arrival. When the morning bell rings at 8:40, which is our normal time, they come into the classroom, and from 8:45 to 9 o'clock, they do their morning routines while eating breakfast at their desks. Simply because of the schedule that was already set in place this year, 4th and 5th grade does look a little bit different. The kids come in at 8:20 rather than going to the recess, and they have breakfast all together in the cafeteria, and then they get an extra recess later on in the day to make up for the morning recess. We do have one 5th grade class that decided they wanted to try and see if they were able to get their breakfast in prior to the special first thing in the morning, and that has worked well, so the others are thinking about trying to do that as well. Those are kind of pictures of the coolers. They're on wheels, and they just wheel them right out to the classrooms, and the students grab their things on the way in. The graph shows our student impact. These were the 4 days prior to us starting breakfast in the classroom. Our highest breakfast was 148, and then after breakfast in the classroom are the purple, and our highest breakfast served was 280.
What's the population at Steele?
We have 362.
Okay.
4:30.
Staff feedback, the pros are more students are having breakfast. There's a greater feeling of community. It's really nice to walk around those classrooms and see the kids sitting around their tables just having conversation with each other. There's an opportunity to teach the table etiquette in the lunchrooms and at the long lunch tables, and they're usually supervised by the cafeteria staff. Everybody's so busy, there's not time to address those table manners and etiquette, and so that's nice that the teachers are able to work on that. It's proven to be very quick and efficient. We have less students coming to the office right before lunch because they're hungry. And all our students, at least kindergarten through third, are getting recess together before school and getting some of that energy out. Some of the cons, primarily in kindergarten, we have some spills, although that is getting better, which has caused some ants. Waste from the packaged items, which we've been trying to cut back on. Less hot items are served. However, we've been working really closely with Matt about offering more of the hot items that the students are requesting. Up to this point, because it is new and it is a pilot, we haven't had a set menu in advance, so the kids with allergies can't kind of plan ahead as far as what they're going to have. And we go through a significant number of Clorox wipes and sanitizing hand wipes at this time, so trying to problem solve how to not use as many of those. A couple quotes from the teachers that they sent in. First grade teacher, Mrs. McDonald, this program has provided my students with a sense of security and knowing they will have a healthy, enjoyable breakfast with their friends. They no longer worry about getting here late or missing out on the playground time before school. Each morning starts with a relaxed environment where the students have quickly learned how to prepare their own area for eating, retrieve their food, and find a place to enjoy this time with their friends. Nearly every student in my class eats every day now. It has become one of our favorite times of the day. Our life skills teacher, Megan Wright, she says the life skills 3-5 class enjoys breakfast in the classroom because it's a quieter, calmer start to our day. The students sit in a small group at a table with a teacher, and many students are opening up and talking about their lives more like they would around a dinner table. It's promoted the family feel. I eat my own breakfast with them as well, and they will comment on that they like seeing me eat with them. I think overall the kids see it as a positive experience. I did ask a couple kiddos today for their feedback. They didn't have time to really think about it, so some of their answers are interesting, but oh, it's giving me an error, Mr. Jacobson.
I'm sure they were positive, otherwise you wouldn't have them there.
Bernardo, do you like breakfast in the classroom? What do you like best about it? Bernardo, do you like breakfast in the classroom? Yes. What do you like best about it? I like apples and cereal, and I always eat my juice. You always eat the juice? Good. What do you like about having it in the classroom instead of the cafeteria? I like having some jokes. Oh, very good. Is it quiet in your classroom, or is it noisy and crazy when you're eating breakfast? Quiet a little bit. Very good. Do you think that we should keep doing breakfast in the classroom? Oh, yes. Yes? All right.
This little one's in second grade and she'll be running the school district soon. She has lots of good ideas about what we can do.
Tell us about breakfast in your classroom. Breakfast is good in our class. We should do it next year because everyone enjoys it.
What's your favorite breakfast food that you eat?
Apples and orange juice.
Very good. Do most of the kids in your class eat the breakfast?
Yes.
Yes. Tell me, is the classroom very noisy or is it pretty calm during breakfast?
Very calm.
And can you describe the routine? What happens when we walk in the morning?
We take our shirts down, people greet us, we put on music, and we take our paper, and then we get started. And if people start, then the acts if they want seconds. If they want seconds, they go up and get seconds. And if you haven't started your paper, no, you did not get seconds.
Okay, so everybody eats their breakfast while they're working on their morning paper?
Not everyone, but yes.
And a fifth grade student?
Great big to put all our stuff away in order for us to get our breakfast, and then we have a thing where we have to figure out like a little word for the week, and then we have to do that while we're eating our breakfast, and then we do our specials, and then we come back to it.
About how long does it take your class to get through your breakfast?
Well, sometimes if we don't finish it, we can eat when we get back, but most of us finish it, so that's in 15 minutes.
What is your favorite breakfast food that you've had so far?
I like the little butter.
Excellent. Do you prefer the fresh fruits or do you prefer like the fruits in the cup?
Like the fruits, like the frozen berries, strawberries.
Excellent. Do you think that this is something that we should continue next year with the kids?
Yes, I think it's fun because you get morning recess, and you don't have to stay in the cafeteria.
Excellent. All right, thank you, babe. What does that routine look like in a fifth grade class? We did do a survey with our elementary students. 90% of the students did enjoy breakfast in the classroom. 55% of our students never ate breakfast at home. And we did ask for their top wish list of breakfast items, and the biggest item all the kids wanted was fresh fruit, followed by yogurt, breakfast pizza, muffins, mini cinnamon rolls, which who doesn't want those, and sausage, egg, and cheese sandwiches. And our next steps are looking to create more hot breakfast options based on student feedback at all of the schools. Look at alternatives to styrofoam and ways to cut down on waste, and continue to seek feedback from both the teachers and students. Any questions for us?
I know it was a short period of time, and this wouldn't statistically be weigh in on anything, but did you find a difference in truancy?
Nothing more.
Nothing. I know it was a short period of time, but I just wanted to
We do have some kiddos who typically eat at home and have food allergies and food sensitivities, and even those parents have packed sack lunches so that the kids can, or sack breakfast, so they can have it with their friends and sit around the table and eat and socialize. And so even those kiddos are really getting to enjoy it as well.
Well, I'll say I was very skeptical. So I did a visit to Steele a number of weeks ago already, and I ended up getting invited into a second grade classroom to observe the routine, and I was much less skeptical after I left. It was totally integrated into their morning routine. This is only after 10 days or something of doing it. And it was really quite pleasant. The kids were sitting there at their tables, eating and doing their work, and it was a very pleasant experience. But her class is usually a very pleasant experience, and I hope everyone's classes will be as well as we move it to all the schools.
We have really seen the kids take responsibility for their classroom and their own materials and their seat, where they're picking up their own breakfast mess and helping to clean up. When I went to a kindergarten room, there was a little boy in there sweeping the floor where he had spilt crumbs, and so they are taking ownership of the process and, of their classroom, which is really neat to see. Anything else for us? Mr. Richard?
This is not really fair, because I get to go after the cute kids and talk about some of the concerns that we have.
Are these your concerns, or are you
Some concerns that I would like to address are my personal ones as a teacher who has students eating in the classroom.
Okay.
As a GA representative for the building from both Lombard and Steele that I have interviewed and talked with. I think that the first thing I'd like to say is everybody recognizes that it's always beneficial for the kids to eat breakfast. We've always done that. I mean, many times the teachers will have things in their room to give to the student, even various times a day, not even time, to make sure they have things to eat. What I would propose is that we take a look at how that gets accomplished. These are some of the concerns that we're having. I will speak particularly about Lombard. Lombard's regular schedule before we started the breakfast program was that we would start school as far as the first class of the day with an advisory class. Now, those of you who are not familiar with our advisory class, it can be various things. I mean, depending on the teacher. It's an opportunity for teachers to make kind of a one-on-one with some of the kids. At other times they wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. It's also a time where they can do activities for us, things like working on bullying problems or something like that. It is also an opportunity for some RTI activities that we don't always have an opportunity to do. It is also time, being a math teacher myself, I allow kids to come into my classroom, in my advisory room, to work on math if they've had trouble and have anybody help them with at home. Teachers from other advisory class can send the students to me and I can help them with math and do those types of things. So the advisory covers a tremendous, on and on. There's a lot more things that we do in advisory other than those things. So what I have found is that since we have started the breakfast program, it has hindered what we're able to do in those advisory classes now. Because of kids coming in, now you got to remember, specifically, these are junior high kids. They don't sit there as nicely as the third, fourth, fifth graders and stuff like that. So they're a little more difficult eating breakfast, and we've had a lot of in and out because we have the trash cans that they take when they're finished with their breakfast to the hallway, they dump their trash. So they're in and out of the room depending on what time they finish their breakfast. So you're constantly have that movement between leaving your room and coming into your room. And it's very difficult to manage any kind of program or something that you're trying to work with the kids because you don't have the time, because you don't have the concentration. And when you start to do something like that, as soon as the kid gets up to go dump the tray, concentration is lost. Since the breakfast program, I have not been able to successfully complete an advisory activity with the students. I have also failed to be able to get to all my math students who are needing help with their homework, either from my class or the other math classes. And so I haven't been able to do that, utilize it during that time. As far as with the RTI kids that I've had to help during those times, I have not been able to do that with the breakfast program. I know that sounds terrible because the breakfast program is just as important that the kids eat as it is for the academics. They kind of weigh both the same thing. They kind of go hand in hand. We have issues as far as some of the teachers' concerns are as the sanitary issues is because when the kids come to the classroom, the desks are not clean. So when they come in with their styrofoam trays and they open something, maybe, let's say a muffin's in a bag or something, they open that. It goes on the table. It doesn't make a difference how many times you tell the students or junior high kids, don't put the food on the table, leave it on the tray. It goes on the desktops, and they're not clean. Okay, I know I talked to the custodians and they said they come in probably once or twice a week and clean those desks. That still leaves 3 or 4 days a week that when they come and eat breakfast, those desks are dirty. The other end of that is when they're finished with breakfast, now the desks definitely are not clean. So you have the desks that are not clean from the breakfast been eaten in there, and then they leave, the next group of kids come in, and now they have to sit at a desk that has spills, has crumbs, has the various things, the residues left over from breakfast. I'll give an example of my class. One day after advisory class, we're having the breakfast. I went to start handing out papers for my math class, and I went to set a paper on the desk, and I didn't look before I just handed on the desk, and there was juice on the desk, and of course the paper was wet. Because I didn't wipe down the desk on that day. So the teachers are going to have to wipe down the desk before the kids eat. The teachers are going to have to wipe down the desk after the kids leave and before the next kids get their mouths. But we have issues with, I would call it junior high things. The kids, they just throw the trash on the floor. Bottom line is, today I took photos of my classroom after breakfast. I have orange juice containers where they're under the desk on the floor. We had cereal, so they pull off the pieces of paper off the tops of cereal, it's all over the floor. Today, and this happened to be today, and I was very upset about this, but sometimes you have to stand in the doorway as a teacher because you have groups of kids in your room eating, and then you have kids running back and forth in the hallway, or they're not quite all shoveled into your room yet. And today I was in my doorway and I was watching here at the hallway, and I turned around just in time to see an orange fly from the back of the room all the way across towards the trash can, one of the little oranges. So wasn't too happy about that. So just like the cafeteria where they sometimes do things they're not supposed to be doing, they're doing those things in the classroom as well. So that gets to be a problem. The kids are not always utilizing the trash cans in the hallway. They're putting them in the trash cans in the classroom. So sometimes you have problems with that in there. Spills. We've had numerous times we've had to call the custodian down because we have spills in the hallway, and we've had to deter kids around spills so we get the custodian down there to take care of the spills. I think you get where I'm going with all this. So there's a lot of things that some maybe we could work on and eliminate some of them. Some of them, I think that we could come up with a plan that we could get more kids to go into the cafeteria to eat and guide them in that direction. I know there's not enough room in the cafeteria a suggestion, all sixth graders report to the cafeteria. That's where they start their day, in the cafeteria. Like right now, they start in the auditorium. They're already there. Because convenience is the main thing. It's simple. It's very convenient. I stand at my door, and if a kid doesn't come in my room with a breakfast, I will stop them and encourage them, go back and get your free breakfast. Go back, get it. Sometimes they'll go through the line. It's very easy to get the milk. It's wonderful how that works. But there's times they'll grab one item off of this and walk past the trash can, and everything else goes in the trash. See that many times. It might do the little kidgram things or something like that. I have seen a few issues with bullying where kids will go and grab things off somebody else's tray because that's the one item that they wanted. So we have a few issues with that.
I think these are all issues that need to be resolved.
Yeah.
And that's why you're trying things out. I will point out, and I didn't know this until I did my due diligence on the project, we're required to be doing this after the instructional day starts. It's not really our choice. Because of our numbers of children who are getting free reduced lunch, it's a requirement to participate in the program that we have it after the bell.
It's actually required for
We're,
last year.
we are,
2 years ago.
Yeah, last year. They voted on it 2 years.
we are starting,
So there needs to be discussion how to make it work.
about
You may
15
want to, maybe the issue is that you need to look at what the elementary schools are doing, that that the food's only in the classroom. But that's something you're gonna work out within your building. And I don't think that's something.
Suggestion could be maybe Steele's elementary students go and show the junior high students how to pick up themselves.
That would be-
Yeah,
Yeah.
a couple suggestions, so just as some of the things you mentioned, we had our problem solved through too. So each kid, as they came in and got their breakfast, they also picked up a Clorox wipe. And so they wiped their desk, they set the Clorox wipe on the corner of it, they ate their meal, threw the lunch away, and then wiped their desk again. So it was clean coming in, it was clean going out. And so that was a quick fix. And then as far as having trouble, we did have a couple classes where the kids would get distracted when they went to the hall to throw their things away. And so for those classes, we did an extra liner inside the classroom trash can. All the food in there, and then one student grabs it at the end, ties it in that, sets it in the hallway, and the custodian picks it up. So then that eliminates that back and forth in the hallway. And really that 15-minute social emotional time in the morning for advocacy, he's really working on, the manners and that type of thing. But
Don't be
yourself,
throwing
setting
away-
your place, cleaning up after yourself, because if they can't do that, help us all,
I fully agree on that. I do believe we have started having some conversation about the Clorox wipes, providing the Clorox wipes for all
And
rooms.
I would love to see also if you do, and I'd love to come see what you guys do.
The one thing I did hear from Steele teachers was they're concerned about academic loss of time.
Yeah.
When, for next year, an academic loss of time. They're a little bit concerned on that one. But I agree with you, Maury. There's things here that we can eliminate some of those and work through some of those, but my job was to make you aware of some of the things that's going on and some of the concerns that we have as far as the way the breakfast program is working.
I appreciate your comments, David. I don't think they actually are any different than the cons that were mentioned in the presentation. So I appreciate you reiterating them, but I do think that it's a pilot. I think that there's room for growth, and I think that sometimes if we get out of our own way, we could rethink what that advisory time means for our students. I mean, we have plenty of opportunities. I was just thinking about, right? So as far as, to Jenny's point, using that time for engaging in, classroom management and understanding how to take care of your space and having those conversations with students so they respect the space and so they use the space differently and you engage with your students so that you're building rapport with them. And when it comes to tutoring, and getting extra help, I mean, you yourself run the success program after school at Lombard. So it's, it's a way to, perhaps enhance that program after school if you're not able to use advisory time during that time. So to think about how we create a better stigma-free breakfast environment so that all students are able to eat and feel like they have that ability and they're not being shuffled into the cafeteria. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a nice space, but the problems are still going to exist there too. you know, what I'm hearing at the elementary level is what I would like to see at the junior high level. Community building, that sense that I have a minute to say, hey, how was your day? How do you want your day to go? And we can do this over breakfast and, you know, realistically taking 10 minutes and building it into the advisory, I think is something that as an educator, you know, I don't have the opportunity to do that all the time. But I mean, I have college students bringing their lunch or their breakfast in because the class is 9 to 10:30 and they might be heading from my class in 10 minutes and going to another one. So they've grabbed to go, they got their paper bag, they got their breakfast. I'm not gonna tell them not to eat and they're 20 years old. And so, you know, it's crap. And I have to tell them, I'm not your mama. It's a hashtag. I ain't your mama, pick it up. And, you know, and sometimes they have to be reminded in their 20. So thank you very much for your comments. In lieu of time,
Thank you.
we're going to move on to the next agenda item. Consider approval of the King Elementary School plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Ham?
Well, actually, I'm going to let our chairperson, Mrs. Graves.
Sorry, I logged her out.
Oh, no.
That's okay.
We're leaving the 2 hour mark.
We'll be quick, and I'll just kind of go through the process of the committee, and then Brian is here to answer any logistical or detailed questions.
And for our new board members, this is Brian Archibald from Leggett. He is kind of our lead architect on the project, so you'll be seeing Brian around. And Brett Kettleson is from Russell Construction, who's our construction management company. So they've been working with us on these projects.
We had a series of meetings take place at King's School so that we could kind of get a feel for the current building. We did decide to keep the same committee that worked together for steel because we had answered a lot of the questions already with Brian as far as what was feasible, what we needed, and kind of the ins and outs. So this committee worked for both buildings. The goals were similar to steel, 5 sections of K through 4. We needed space for PE every day. We needed space for a 3-day rotation for specials. We wanted flexible learning spaces for students. We needed to add a gymnasium. And one thing that they wished for this gym was that it could be utilized by groups after hours without access to the building. So they could come in through a secure entrance and exit so they couldn't be in the rest of the building. And then King needed a secure entrance and office, which they did not have at this time. We went through a lot of drafts for King School. Draft 1, their main concern was the placement of the school entrance. So it was actually kind of once you drove past the building, then you saw the school entrance on the corner. So we went to draft 2, and the concerns were there was not enough office space for ELL, speech, and title. And they were afraid that the large flex spaces may be underutilized and perhaps a waste of space moving forward. So we went to draft 3. The main concern for this was a big concern, and it was the distance from the restrooms to the 3rd grade classrooms and the number of toilets for the increased number of students. So here is 3rd grade, and so they'd have a long pod to get to the restrooms. And then we got to our 4th and final draft with a couple hybrid drafts in between, but we finally got to our 4th draft. And we got feedback at all the drafts, but especially for the last one in the focus areas of safety, special education, restrooms, missing spaces, concerns, details, and wishes. Everything in yellow were concerns, suggestions, or wishes that we had that we were able to, well, we weren't. Brian was able to work his magic and make them happen in our final proposal. The biggest concern that staff had was the number of toilet fixtures within the school with the number of students that we'd be having. And so Brian had done some research, and actually with the number of toilets that we put in our final draft per Illinois plumbing code, we have 10 toilet fixtures per gender more than is required. So what he did is change the proximity to the restrooms rather than increase the number of toilet fixtures. And our final draft is the one that you guys had emailed to you. Brian, anything you want to point out about this one?
I will say from the first two drafts, we looked at the placement of the main office and we were trying to connect it to the addition. So on both draft 1 and 2 being north or south, we got some initial feedback that there is a lot of land on the south that it might make sense to build on the south. That's what formulated draft 1. But in the last two drafts, 3 and 4, we positioned the main office out front. Logistically, it makes the most sense if someone's coming to the school, they're gonna look at the front of the school for where the main office is. So both draft 3 and 4 show the main office centrally located. 3 does a better job of balancing the floor plan. The addition is down to the south, but the distance isn't that great to be measurable, I would say. But 3 and 4 were both successful. There are some offices located in the addition or next to the addition if administration wants to spread out, similar to how Steele wanted to handle their assistant principal and principal. There is opportunity to lock down the lobby on the north side. It is adjacent to a lot of the parking that's existing, so you can have nighttime events without having access to the rest of the building. It has a toilet facility next to the gym for those functions. Other than that, it's pretty similar to Steele. The difference between King and Steele is not only budget, because of life safety amendments that are out there, but the lack of renovations that King has received versus Steele. So the budget's a lot greater to bring King up to where Steele is today. And then the addition to the gym, obviously King does not have that today, so it will need that.
Brian, can you also point out the queuing of the parent drop-off in the front?
Yeah, so initial conversations is to align the queuing so it's off the street. The feedback we've been getting is it's kind of a scattered approach right now with car drop-off. Buses would still be down in the south area. I believe buses are in the north currently, so we've kind of flipped that queuing. We still need to work through how close it needs to be to the street, the civil engineer, and how long. I don't think we'll ever get a long enough queuing on site for the amount of cars that you're gonna eventually have. So there's not a whole lot of walkers, there's a lot of drop off, and there's, I think, 5 or 6 buses we talked about currently. So I'm sure that'll increase with the number of students. But yes, car drop off in the front and then bus drop off in the back.
I have a question. My concern is when children are dropped off, if it's before school, they can still go to a playground, correct? Right? Or they have to go right into the school?
I'm not sure how King runs their,
Can kids go and mess around before they start the day?
at Steele, we do go to the playground first, but I don't believe that all elementary schools are the same.
Because I'm not sure how you get to the playground space from the parent drop-off space. Because first of all, part of the playground current playground is covered.
There will be a new K1 and then 2-4 playground. And so we haven't really determined where that space will be yet.
None of the current equipment, the equipment there is the oldest in the district, so none of it will remain. So it'll just be a matter of placement where we put that.
Okay, so, but my thought still is concerned from where a child's dropped off let's say by the entrance. How do they get behind the building in a safe manner? I just hope that's addressed in some way.
Well, probably how they do now. I mean,
Well, but
just go
now,
around the pod.
so that plan there is far better than it is now. Now they drop them right in the middle of the Farnham Street.
Yes.
And they have to fend for themselves basically to get. I'm just being realistic. At least that, and then we have to have parental education on etiquette. We're talking about etiquette for our children. We need parent etiquette on what is right and wrong of dropping a child off at a school.
Yes, this will be drastically different in how it operates today, so there will be lessons that will need to be learned in drop-off.
Yes,
Because
there
you
need
will
parental
need to
lessons.
inform parents that they need to be in the drop-off lane to drop off children instead of coming down in the south parking lot or dropping them off onto the street.
And
So
there's also an option, we're going to designate parking, so there are some parents that want to walk their students up. So they'll be able to park in the parking lot to the north if they want to walk the students up and not have to get in the queue line. The other thing too is, although it's not ideal because there's a street, you know, a half a block from where the queue line starts, but you could queue down Farnham a little further to the north, like heading south, but in that way, so that you could line up in order to get into the queue line. We looked at a lot of different options about looping it down and looping it around the property. Yeah, but you're talking a lot of concrete, you're talking a lot of expense. You know, we have the area, we just don't have the budget to loop around a giant queue in the whole building.
It'll go the same thing with pickup, because right now pickup's the same way, because they're just let out of the school and they kind of know where their parents gonna be parked. So you're logistically gonna have to treat that once the drop off is forward for kids to form line in front of the school and wait for cars to come so they're not going into the street to get picked up.
Well, the advantage is this will be new for some parents, so having parent education on drop off pickup is going to be natural for the new parents to the school.
Sure.
Which parking lot do you assume is the faculty parking lot?
Well, the one on the south there will probably house the majority of faculty, and then there may need to be a few more to the north, but the majority would be on the south.
Because that parking's probably not sufficient.
No,
on the south.
and we want to queue the buses there too, so we want to eliminate anybody who would be coming in and out at that time,
Right.
which the faculty won't be.
So right now, the budget doesn't assume any enlargement of the south park.
No. Resurfacing, hopefully, but no enlargement.
Some of the highlights for our final proposal for King is that we did include the bathrooms in the kindergarten rooms, much like Silas and Steele. There's an enclosed courtyard that could be used for a variety of purposes, such as outdoor classrooms or exploratory activities with the STEM program. The new gymnasium that can be accessed by outside groups, an open concept library and media center for flexible grouping, a secure entryway and office, and then a STEM room. Any questions?
I didn't attend all the meetings, but I know that one of the teachers said that where we're building the gym, that was like a swampland. Did you look into that?
Yeah, we're still studying the survey, but most of the water pushes towards the train tracks. I think we
Yeah.
got in there. The water will be addressed, so we're not gonna affect any property to the north. By law, we're not allowed to change the contours, but we will help the water flow better on the site.
And the new gym is is near where the K1 playground is now.
Right.
And water does not
At your
accumulate
house.
there. My backyard's right there.
Yeah.
There is no water that accumulates there.
That's good.
Way out further,
In the
it
back.
looks like a lake,
Mhm.
but right there it doesn't.
Yeah, so we'll have to add some detention with the new building and to address the existing on-site.
And Brian fortunately got to be at King one day when it was raining, and we also have some water issues in the very front of the building that he saw, and it'll be addressed as well, so.
Any other questions?
When I spoke to you about this plan at one point, you said you would love to have the office open up to the hallway, the principal's office. I still see that's still not included. You couldn't afford that, or what happened to that idea?
That's my personal preference. That doesn't mean that it would be every principal's preference.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, we do have a space within the building, much like they did for Steele, where a principal or assistant principal could be, where they were more open to the students.
By the flex space in the
Mhm,
green. Yeah, right in between the green.
So ideally, we would have either the principal or the assistant principal housed in that area of the building, just like it's Steele, and then one in the main office, so that we have our resources distributed throughout the building.
Is there no life skill? I just know that was a problem when we were working with steel.
And although we have EL students in all of our buildings, right now, it looks like probably our highest concentration of EL students will be in this building. So there's kind of specialized programs targeted for each of the K4 buildings in essence.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Allison?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Thanks.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Lyon.
Yes.
Phelps.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Okay, next we have
On the building projects here, so when do we hear about what's the term again?
Value
Value
engineering.
engineering.
Value engineering and the others, and what things we thought we were getting that we're not gonna be getting.
We have a meeting tomorrow.
We're still working through the budgets and through the value engineering project.
So in June, we'll see that, because at one point you wanted to put out some bids yet, right?
Lombard is pretty much, we've VE'd everything.
That's value engineering, right?
Yes, sorry, value engineering, VE.
Not victory in Europe.
Yes. We're pretty much done with Lombard and the value engineering and the kitchen consultant. And so we'll be looking at final plans. We have a little more work to do with the civil engineers on a couple things, but that's looking to go out to bid in July, and then steel will follow after that. So
Will we see something in next month's meeting?
hopefully we'll have those plans. We're really kind of waiting on civil right now. But hopefully they will have all of their plans finalized, and then we can bring that forward. Lombard doesn't look much different than what we talked about. We did, at this point in time, value engineer out the renovations to the main office. So if you recall, you and Member Banks were there, we were going to take that classroom that's next to the office and make that kind of half into a conference room, half into ISSP, create a corridor through there. Those renovations were $85,000. So when we were over budget, 500, that was an easy cut. We'll just simply repurpose that classroom into a conference room as needed, what we need to. And then we did a couple other items. We relocated the teacher's lounge. We were able to, because the kitchen footprint needs to be much smaller at Lombard than we had initially anticipated. The teacher's workroom and lounge can go where the existing cafeteria is.
So we've cut down the size of the addition.
Yes. So we didn't have to add that on. So, and it actually helps us some issues with the auditorium, because if you know the back of Lombard, there's a staircase that goes down into the basement there. We were not sure how we were gonna tie all of that together if that addition went right up to those staircases, so it won't go that far. So, yeah, I would say those plans would be available by the June 8th meeting, and hopefully we'll have steel finalized as well.
The board ultimately will approve the specs that go out to bid.
Yes.
So, none of this is gonna go anywhere until the board approves it. So, yes, we hope June. We don't want to overpromise. That would be a great thing. We're doing everything we can to get there, but until it's ready, we don't want to present something that's not ready to be recommended.
Okay. Now we will move to consider approval of a custodial maintenance transportation agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Didn't even have to pass this time.
Good job.
Dr. Aslan.
Thank you. As I said last month, we had it on the agenda last month to be approved, but there was one item to be worked out. That item was worked out, I think, ironically, I believe the next day after the board meeting. So this has been agreed to in principle. The union has voted, ratified it. I think it was unanimous, wasn't it? Yeah. We are recommending the approval of that. You see the highlight and the changes here. They really aren't large. There's some overtime procedural items that we had. We removed Columbus Day from the holiday list, try to remain consistent. We changed how we reimbursed uniforms. Service bonus, that was the issue, that was the sticking point, but we had that worked through so that it's on their anniversary date, and we look back twice a year. And then you see the increases are 3% across the board each year of the 3-year contract.
Service bonus sunsets now after July 1st of this year. Remember, anybody new coming on board.
Well, and that, yeah,
Will
that
not
was
be
agreed
eligible.
to, that it's only for people that work here now. So any new employees aren't going to be getting this.
Which is what's also food service.
Which was very similar to the food, or identical to the food service arrangement. So we're trying to achieve as much consistency as we can across the agreement. So we felt very good about this agreement, and last month we did 2, but we just had to work through that one item. So we're very happy with what we're offering. for your approval tonight.
Any other questions? Allison?
Walters?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Any questions for new board members? We have a policy,
Out of state or overnight, they must be approved by the board.
so that is what this is. Do we have any questions about any of them?
The only one I would just make sure that Great Galesburg Shakeman is still a surprise to other people. So you know where the location is, but other people don't. So if we can keep that between us for now, that would be great.
I have a question. Is the girls' basketball team not going anywhere this summer?
Yeah, theirs already been approved.
Yeah.
So theirs was approved last month.
Okay,
You've had, as they come up, we just
okay.
move them on.
And just so new board members are aware, so just today, Mrs. Ham and I were looking at some expenditures for hotels or things like that. We were double checking, cutting a check versus approved trips. So we won't cut the checks until the board's approved them. So, and it is, not that anyone's ever asked this, but because we live so close to the river, it may seem silly that if they go to Iowa, we approve it, and if they go to Cairo, we don't. But that's the way it's worded. If it's out of state, we approve it, or ask for the approval.
Or unless it's overnight.
And if it's
Any
overnight,
overnight trip.
anywhere, if it's overnight to, Pekin. I don't know why anybody go to Pekin, right? He's from. But yeah, so if it's overnight anywhere, and then if it's out of state.
Any other questions? Allison?
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Abstain?
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
All right. Next, agenda item 10, personnel. Do I have a motion to consider approval of the personnel
So more.
Second.
Any questions? Allison?
Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyon? Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Okay. Next item, grievance update. Dr. Asplund.
Thank you. Last month I told you we had 3 outstanding. I guess technically we still do. We are to beyond stage 2 on one of them, and the other 2, Dave and I are meeting Thursday. And we can go over some of that. That's in addition to some other items. So that's all.
Okay. Now to some people's favorite part of the meeting. Comments by members of the Board of Education. I will start to my left, Member Banks.
I want to, for benefit for people who are at this meeting, people who might be viewing this meeting, I don't think we can say enough about what a great district this is. Whether it's athletics, it's fine arts, it's the students that were chosen to go to the Illinois Principals Association breakfast, the recent teachers that got the Excellence in Education Awards, the 70-plus students that had the signing for the vocational signing day, the fact that we have students whose paintings are going to be hanging in Congress, I just can't get over that. And I just want to make sure that the teachers, the students, the principals, this administration, Dr. Asplund, understand how appreciated you are, and you don't hear it enough. And I think we could tell you every day, and you still wouldn't hear it enough. And the other thing, I sent them a note personally, but I want you to know, those of you that are in elementary buildings, that those May baskets mean a lot to a lot of your neighbors. Mine hangs in my garage every year until I get the next one the next year. And when we get on Facebook, but did you get one yet? I know they haven't come down here and then, whatever. And things that we're teaching our students, like picking up trash, collecting food for fish, pennies for Sandberg, or for cancer research. You're doing such a fabulous job of building character in our students along with academics and education. So I just want to say thanks again.
Well, being as a newbie on the board, I want to thank everybody for the presentations and the opportunity to serve on the board. But I can tell we got our spokesman here. We can hide behind the Maury. But I will tell you, it's proud to echo what Ricky's saying. One reason I got on the board is to help some of the decisions going on, but I can see a lot of hard work's went on before I ever sat here. And 2 or 3 years ago, I was nervous that we would be able to say what we're saying tonight. So looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
Member Lane.
I have a few things if I could. First of all, I'm sorry. First of all, you aren't wrong. There is such thing as a free lunch, because I had one today. A number of us participated in this elected official luncheon that the Chamber of Commerce put on.
The district paid for it.
It wasn't free.
It wasn't.
No, it wasn't free.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Free to have.
I'm glad I ate a lot. You didn't pay, I hope.
No, I didn't eat.
Good. Well, but Tiana made a wonderful presentation about the district. They had the mayor and then Tiana as some of the biggest taxing agencies in the area speak, and she did a wonderful job representing what we're doing, and we should be real happy with how you did there. Thank you. Not being a chamber member, it's easier for me to say, but it's free. I'm sorry. Okay, you didn't tell me that, Amy.
It wasn't her job to tell you that.
Okay, I could have paid for my own lunch.
Checks can be made payable to.
Okay, the other piece, I've had this idea that I shared with you. I just want my other board members to think that we change how we sit here. That we put the whole board on this side and the staff people on that side. So at one point, when we get the audience closer to us and we have a different camera thing, the distance from the camera to the people may be closer, so we don't look like munchkins if people watch the board meetings. So just something to think about, change how we orient it. There'd be room for the superintendents next to the president and all on one side here. Just a thought.
We can see each other.
You like this?
I like it
Yes,
this way,
we can
too.
talk to each other like this.
We need to figure out some other way of doing the camera.
Everybody's looking down.
Lastly, I went to the GHS art show last week. I was very impressed. I am impressed every time I go there, thinking, well, I take a lot of art in college, and I can't do a thing like this. But it was a wonderful show. I hope a lot of people took advantage of seeing it. It shows what schools that have maintained art programs can do with their students. And I'm glad we still have such programs in our community.
Thank you. Member Walter.
I just want to say thank you to all of the individuals that are outgoing. You've dedicated a lot of time, personal time, as well as your professional lives to 205 and the students and families. So thank you, and hopefully you enjoy a long and healthy retirement. Take advantage of those benefits.
I just want to say, yeah, the first meeting being on the board was exciting. We got to honor retirees, so that was neat. I can't wait to see what happens in the next 4 years. And thank you for voting for me.
Member Sure.
No comments.
Oh. He'd like to move this along. It's Kurt's playing tonight.
Let's go Blues.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, Member Lane. It was exciting to be invited to that. I believe this was the first time that the chamber has invited the local school district elected officials. And so it's nice to be part of that conversation, because as they read in my introduction, I think that when we sit here on the board, the decisions that we make for the betterment of our educational system and our community does impact what our business leaders are doing and what our taxpayers are paying for. And so for us to be involved in those conversations and to really be able to provide a sense of what we're doing and what our vision is as a school district to those members of the community that will hopefully be hiring our graduates. I had a great conversation at my table, and I hope the other members of the district that were there had great conversations at their table as well. I appreciate all the hard work that has gone into another school year. I'm going to say that now because by the time we're sitting at this table, the year will be done. So thank you to all of our administrators and all of our educators, to our families who have painstakingly helped work through an awful winter to get us to this point. We have had a lot of successes over this year, and as I was working to put those comments together for this afternoon's little speech, I had to somehow narrow 5 years of experiences down into 5 minutes, and it was not easy. I could have gone on and on with all the accomplishments in this year alone. So thank you. I appreciate that dedication, and I know that our students are prepared for it. Any future agenda items for the good of the order? If you think of any between now and the next board meeting, please contact Dr. Asplund and I. Our next board meeting, regular board meeting, will be June 10th, 7 o'clock. We may have to call a special board meeting.
Yes. If we get to that point, we will be alerting everybody.
So with that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Allison?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
They can stay.
Nobody can leave yet though, because I need signatures from everybody.
Signatures from Earbomb.
You want to visit them?